In a park, she performed a life-saving act for someone she didn't know. 3 hours passed, and then 5 high-end automobiles arrived at her residence. The subsequent events rendered her utterly stunned. 20 years. That was the duration of Denise Lattimore's service to that hospital. She wasn't simply a nurse, she was the nurse. The one they consulted when situations became critical. The one who eagerly accepted the less desirable shifts. Holidays, weekends, overnight assignments. Denise was consistently present. And then, abruptly, she ceased her service. The electronic message arrived at 6:42 a.m. While she was sipping her first cup of coffee, her shift wasn't supposed to start until 7:30. There was no meeting, no call. Just a subject line that read position status update. She clicked it and read, "We regret to inform you that due to internal restructuring, your position has been terminated effective immediately. Your final paycheck will be deposited by the end of the week. We thank you for your years of service." That was it. No signature, no explanation. Denise watched the screen, anticipating additional information. A follow-up, a phone number. Anything, nothing. She blinked, shut the laptop, and remained still. Her daughter, Mecca, was still asleep upstairs. The last thing Denise desired was for her to awaken and observe her mother falling apart before 7 a.m. Denise placed the coffee mug in the sink and stood for a full minute with her hands braced on the counter. She didn't cry. Not yet. She grabbed her keys, slipped on her running shoes, and left a note on the table. Went for a walk. "Be back soon. Love you." She didn't even bother to change out of her scrubs. She walked out the door and headed for Avondale Park, one of the oldest in Birmingham. It was quiet this time of morning. Just a few regulars walking their dogs, a jogger here and there. Denise wasn't sure what she was doing. She hadn't planned this walk. She hadn't planned anything. A weight settled in her chest, a feeling she needed to process. The phrases from the email echoed in her mind. "We regret to inform you." She considered it harsh, not just the dismissal, but the moment it occurred. Her daughter had recently begun her studies at Miles College. Tuition payments were approaching, and Denise had been striving to manage every dollar to cover expenses. There had been no prior notice, no meeting, no warning, simply a formal, impersonal message. She walked until her calves ached. She located a bench overlooking the small lake and sat down. Her phone vibrated. It was Mecca. "Hey, Mom, everything okay?" It read, "Didn't hear you leave." Denise looked at the message. She began to type a reply. Deleted it. Typed another. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just needed air. Love you." She set the phone down and leaned back against the bench. The sky was a gentle, early blue, the kind of color that could make you momentarily forget how difficult life can be. "I gave them everything," she murmured, not realizing she had spoken aloud. To anyone else observing, she appeared like just another woman taking a morning walk. But internally, Denise was falling apart, not solely due to the job loss, but from the silence that followed. No one from the hospital contacted her. No one sent a message. 20 years, and not a single farewell. She rubbed her eyes. She wouldn't cry in a park, but something within her altered right then. Perhaps it was exhaustion. Perhaps it was grief. Perhaps it was anger disguised in a gentler form. For the first time in a long time, Denise felt still. Not okay, just still. Then she heard it. A sound. Quick, sharp, like someone hitting the pavement hard. She turned her head. A man had fallen near the trail, just beyond the row of hedges. He was maybe in his late 50s, face down on the ground, motionless. People looked, but no one moved. But Denise did. Denise didn't hesitate. Her body kicked into gear before her mind even caught up. She rose quickly, running towards the man prone on the asphalt. As she approached, the heat of the pavement was noticeable, along with the odor of sweat and a metallic tang. She wasn't sure if it was blood or fear. He remained still. "Sir?" she asked, kneeling beside him. "Can you hear me?" There was no response. Several individuals had paused at a safe distance. No one advanced. She carefully turned him over, observing his chest for signs of life, his neck for a pulse. His complexion was ashen. A bluish tint was appearing on his lips. Denise placed her fingers on the side of his neck. She felt nothing. "Call 911. She shouted without looking up. Someone mumbled, "Already did," but it seemed unimportant. She began counting seconds. She tilted his head back, checking his airway. Then she leaned in, delivered 2 quick breaths, and started compressions. 1, 2, 3. Her hands moved as if she's done this many times before. But this wasn't a training dummy. This was real. This was a matter of life or death. An audience observed, whispering and recording with their phones. However, their presence was insignificant. It was solely about her and him, and the sound of her hands striking his chest. "Come on," she murmured. "Don't you dare give up." He appeared to be in his mid-50s, dressed in a fitted black workout set, with a wedding ring and an Apple Watch. He seemed like the type of man who should be too healthy to collapse in public. But hearts are not governed by appearances. 1 minute passed, then 2. Denise felt sweat soaking through her scrubs, her hair plastered to her forehead. Her arms were sore, and her back throbbed. She continued working, focusing on her breathing. She compressed and counted. The silence was intense, a silence that felt like it was holding its breath. Then he gasped. The breath was weak and strained, but it was a breath. Denise moved closer. "Hey, are you with me?" His eyelids flickered. His chest moved a slight movement. Paramedics arrived less than a minute later. 2 of them rushed from the ambulance, carrying equipment. "I got him breathing," Denise said swiftly, stepping aside to allow them to take over. "No pulse when I arrived." I immediately began compressions. One of the medics acknowledged her. "Are you a nurse?" She replied, "I was." He didn't have time to inquire further. They proceeded with urgency. Oxygen mask, defibrillator pads, and vital signs assessment. Denise retreated, allowing the trained professionals to take charge. Her hands trembled. Someone behind her commented, "You saved him." She turned to see a woman, mid-30s, a jogger, visibly anxious. "You were incredible," the woman added. I didn't know what to do." Denise nodded once, then turned her eyes back to the man on the ground. She didn't need thanks. She just needed him to live. As they loaded him onto the stretcher, one of the paramedics looked at her and said, "You bought him time. That man's lucky you were here." Denise gave a tired half-smile. "I guess we both are," she said, watching as the ambulance pulled away. Sirens off. That was usually a good sign. The crowd began to thin, individuals returning to their daily lives as if nothing had occurred, as though they hadn't just witnessed a stranger die and return before their very eyes. Denise remained still for a brief moment, her heart racing. She then proceeded back towards the bench where it all began, sat down once more, and picked up her phone. Mecca had sent another message. "Mom, are you okay? Would you like me to bring breakfast?" Denise gazed at the message, her thumbs pausing above the screen. She then typed, "I'll be home soon." An event occurred. "I'll explain when I return," she texted. She didn't know the man's name, didn't know if he'd survived the day. Her actions weren't for praise. It was a reaction. It was inherent. It was her purpose. Although her professional role had shifted, her identity remained unchanged. But the world had a peculiar habit of returning when you least anticipated it. Denise didn't realize how quickly that return would happen. 3 hours later, Denise was back home. Mud clung to her shoes, a souvenir from the park, and she was still wearing her scrubs. Mecca had prepared eggs and toast, placing them on the stove before heading to her shift at the daycare. The house was silent, punctuated only by the ticking of the wall clock, which consistently ran 5 minutes fast. Denise settled onto the front porch, cradling a chipped mug of green tea. She held it with both hands, attempting to find comfort in its warmth rather than dwell on the persistent tension beneath her ribs. Her thoughts were jumbled, with fragments of the incident in the park and recollections of the chilling email. She couldn't erase the image of his face, the initial stillness of his chest. She remembered the moment she felt a return of life under her hands. She had witnessed people flatline previously, but this felt deeply personal. She took a deliberate sip, then she registered the sound. Engines, several of them. She raised her head from her mug and blinked. 5 luxury vehicles approached her street, following one another. These weren't simply elegant cars. They were the type usually seen in magazines or on social media influencers' profiles. Among them was a Lucid Air, a Mercedes Maybach, a matte black Escalade reflecting the afternoon light, a Rolls-Royce Ghost, and trailing behind, a sleek Aston Martin that emitted a distinct, almost living sound. The vehicles decelerated and halted directly in front of her house. A peculiar sensation arose within her, not fear precisely, but a more profound feeling, a quiet prompting. This concerns the events that followed. The entrance of the Lucid opened. A man emerged, tall, wearing a sharp suit, untied, charcoal gray with a black shirt beneath. He was clean-shaven, silver highlighting his temples, his face bearing a tranquil expression as if possessing an eternity. It required a moment for recognition, but when he spoke, her breath halted. "Miss Lattimore," she rose deliberately. He advanced, his walk fluid and assured, yet unpretentious. "I believe you saved my life earlier today," he stated. At the park, Denise peered, trying to recognize him. Appearing calm, without any signs of distress, with his complexion restored and his eyes bright, he seemed almost transformed. But it was indeed him. You collapsed," she observed. "I did," he confirmed with a slight nod. "And I understand I wouldn't have recovered if it weren't for your assistance," she commented, setting down her mug. "How did you locate me?" He responded with a gentle, almost regretful smile. "A person with my resources usually has people managing specifics, but let's just say I was highly driven." She felt her throat tighten. "I didn't do it for any reason." "I know," he said swiftly. "That's precisely why I'm here." A younger woman, likely in her mid-30s, emerged from behind him, stepping out of the Escalade with a thick envelope and a small tablet. She remained silent, simply waiting. "My name's Roland Greaves," the man stated. "I have several companies, primarily in logistics and software. It's not a flashy business, but I've achieved success. Earlier today, I was approximately 30 seconds from not experiencing another sunrise." Denise adjusted her posture, her jaw moving. She wasn't certain of the direction this conversation would take, but it felt significant. "I want to speak with you," Roland stated. "Just 5 minutes. I'm not here to offer you a product or create a disturbance, but I have a debt I'm unsure how to resolve." She hesitated, remaining uncertain. She then said softly, "You're welcome to sit if you wish." He nodded once. "Thank you." They proceeded together to the porch. She observed the cars passing by. No one else emerged from the vehicles. As he settled into a chair, Roland surveyed the surroundings. "Pleasant place. It has a lived-in feel." "That's right," she replied. "Mecca's room is the one with the damaged blind." She explained that she had broken it while trying to chase away a wasp. He smiled. "Sounds like a spirited individual." "Is she?" A brief pause occurred. He then turned to her. "May I ask you a personal question?" She nodded. "Why didn't you wait for another person to assist?" Denise inhaled deeply. "Because if it were me, I would have hoped someone wouldn't wait." He observed his gaze downwards. He nodded slowly. Then, he looked in her eyes once more. I needed to hear that, but Roland hadn't come solely to thank her. He'd come with a proposition, one that would assess the extent of her trust in the kindness of strangers. Denise leaned back in her chair, her arms crossed over her chest. "So," she said, maintaining a level tone, "what precisely is this concerning?" Roland moved closer, his elbows gently on his knees. "You gave me 12 minutes of your time, and in those 12 minutes you didn't pause. You didn't inquire who I was or what I might provide. You simply defended me." Denise remained silent. She wasn't swayed by words. She's heard numerous eloquent presentations at hospital fundraisers and board meetings. This felt distinct, but she still didn't understand his direction. "I established a company from nothing," he stated. "It began in a garage in Baton Rouge. My first product was shipped from a rented storage unit. I navigated through losses, lawsuits, and everything in between. Now I have 500 employees and the ability to set my own guidelines." He paused. "But despite all of that, I've never encountered someone helping me without expecting something in return. Not since my mother. That sort of generosity. It alters your viewpoint." Denise observed him intently. "So, what exactly are you proposing, Mr. Greaves?" "I'm not seeking assistance." He raised a hand. "Nor am I. I'm not attempting to provide a rescue. I'm aiming to make an investment. She frowned slightly. I researched your background, he continued. After my assistant located the incident report, I requested your employment history. Hope you aren't upset. Denise gave a humorless laugh. I'm accustomed to people investigating my affairs. This week has been filled with new experiences. Roland smiled. You were the most sought-after nurse in your department. There were notes from patients in the files about you. One woman mentioned that you were the reason she was able to get out of bed following her surgery. She also threw a shoe at me when I instructed her to perform her breathing exercises. He laughed. Nevertheless, she recalled you fondly. Then he retrieved something from his pocket. It was small, square, and black. He sat on the arm of her chair. A key fob. What is that? She inquired, looking at it but not touching it. It's for one of the cars parked outside, he said. The Lucid. Brand new. It's yours if you'd like it. Denise paused, studying it. Are you serious? She asked. As a second heart attack. He replied, only partially teasing. She didn't take the key. Why me? She questioned. I don't know many people like you, he stated plainly, and I've been thinking lately. I want to surround myself with people who move toward the problem, not away from it. People who act without needing a reason. He looked at her, his expression gentling. So I'd like to offer you a job. Denise blinked. He continued, I'm launching a new initiative. A wellness foundation linked to our company, focused on underserved communities, free clinics, training programs, and mental health outreach. Needs assistance. Funding is available, but we lack the personnel to establish it. We require someone with your expertise to help build it. Someone who understands the system's complexities and knows what individuals truly need. He paused. You would be director of clinical programs, responsible for setting the strategic direction and building your own team. The compensation is excellent, with full benefits. And you would have the autonomy to shape the foundation. She stared at him, speechless. Alternatively, he suggested softly, you're allowed to decline. I will still provide the vehicle. I will still express my gratitude. However, if you accept, I believe we have the potential to create something substantial. A pause settled between them, but it lacked tension. At length, Denise inquired, what would motivate you to entrust such a significant duty to someone you have only just met? Roland remained composed, stating, because occasionally, the instance in which someone rescues your life reveals that they are the individual you were meant to have known from the beginning. Denise found herself at a loss for words. She glanced at the key fob once more. Then, she looked at him. You'll give me time to think, take as long as you want. Just know this. I didn't come here to reward you. I came because I think the world needs more people like you making decisions that matter. But as soon as Roland left, Denise's heart remained unsettled. If anything, it pounded faster, because accepting meant stepping into something she wasn't sure she could manage, and that scared her more than losing a job ever did. That night, Denise remained restless. She sat on the bed's edge in the dimness, the faint light from the hallway offering little illumination. Her fingers followed the contours of the advanced key fob still on her nightstand, and used since Roland departed. It seemed overly substantial, overly swift, too remarkable to be genuine. She had experienced disappointment previously, not solely connected to the hospital. Years earlier, Mecca's father had pledged them security, only to disappear as debts accumulated. Denise understood from a young age to be wary of smiles, even those that appeared gentle. However, this opportunity felt different. It wasn't charity, it was a chance, one she hadn't anticipated. Needing a moment to herself, she put on a hoodie, placed the key fob in her pocket, and went outside. The Lucid remained, parked silently beneath the streetlight, its design distinct, its paint rich and flawless like midnight. She opened the driver's side door, anticipating an alarm. There was none. The vehicle greeted her as if familiar with her. Within, the cabin remained still and quiet, the dashboard illuminated with a gentle hum. She refrained from starting the engine. Instead, she simply sat, her palms resting on the steering wheel, inhaling a scent reminiscent of fresh leather and potential. She didn't register Mecca until the passenger door opened. Okay, Mom, her daughter stated, entering the car. Who did you rescue? And what sort of James Bond operation were you involved in? Denise looked up, surprised. What are you doing awake? The porch light was on, and you weren't in your room. That's code for Mom is spiraling. Mecca glanced around. This car is insane, by the way. Denise sighed. It was the man in the park. He found me. Mecca turned sharply. What? How? He's not just some guy. His name's Roland Greaves, owns like 3 companies. He offered me a job. Mecca's eyes widened. Doing what? Building something. A clinic. A program. He wants me to run it. Wait. He once met you, almost lost his life, and now wants you to lead his company's health division? That's the summary. Mecca reclined in the seat. And you're presently in the car he provided. Because you haven't decided yet. I don't want to accept something I didn't earn. Mom, Mecca said, looking at her. You save his life. You deserve the air in this car. Denise remained quiet. Look, Mecca continued. I understand. You're apprehensive. This feels like an opportunity that's almost unbelievable. You always said, fear doesn't get to run the show. You told me that the night before my first recital. That was different. No, it wasn't. Mecca's voice softened. This might be the first time in your life someone sees your worth openly. Not after 10 years. Not when you're desperate. But right now. And you're hesitating because you're used to fighting for scraps. Denise turned to look at her. You think I should take it? I think. Do not allow fear to guide your decision. They remained silent for a while longer. The following morning, Denise drove the Lucid. She drove slowly, not far, just a few miles down to a nearby diner, where she and Mecca used to eat breakfast when Mecca was little. She needed a place to think without feeling confined. While she drank her coffee, an older man in a corduroy jacket sitting at the counter gave her a polite nod. Beautiful car outside, he said. Denise turned, feeling a little unsteady, still adjusting. Can't complain about good fortune, he remarked, moving his cup. You simply need to ensure you utilize it wisely. But Denise understood that blessings invariably carried a cost, and the subsequent action would necessitate her abandoning everything she believed about herself, to evolve into someone else. Assuming she possessed the bravery, Denise remained in her kitchen, her arms crossed, observing the document Roland's assistant had provided. It detailed the job description and compensation package. The title, Director of Clinical Programs, still felt unfamiliar, like something that belonged to someone else. The numbers on the salary line alone made her chest tighten. She'd always been modest, made her way on steady, honest work. Never dreamed of 6 figures, certainly not with benefits and a personal driver listed in the perks. It felt unreal, uncomfortable even, but not because it wasn't real, because part of her believed she didn't deserve it. Denise answered the phone, not to contact Roland, but to reach out to someone else, a name she hadn't spoken in years. Hi, is this Bernardine Willis? A moment of silence. Then a recognizable voice responded, Yes, who is calling? It was Denise. Denise Lattimore. They had worked together at Jefferson Medical when they were both assigned to the night shift. Another pause, then a surprised laugh. Girl, are you kidding me? Denise? From 2A? I thought you disappeared. I was let go this week. The line was silent for a moment. And you? You were excellent. That's what I believed as well. Denise outlined the situation concisely. The collapse. The man. The offer. Bernardine expressed quiet disbelief. And you're contacting me because? Because I harbor doubts. And because I fear I might not be adequate. Bernardine responded immediately. Denise, the hospital never appreciated your value. We all recognize that. You mentored half those new employees while they rewarded positions to individuals who couldn't recall the crash cart protocols. Denise laughed once. I recall, when someone recognizes your value and offers you the opportunity to influence things, embrace it. Denise felt a warmth behind her eyes. And what if it fails? She inquired. Then you'll leave with your head held high, as you always have. But don't decline because you believe you'll be out of place. You're not. More than most. That night, Denise didn't pace the floor. She didn't overthink. She retrieved the contract, reviewed it completely, and then signed. The following morning, Roland contacted her. I allowed you a few days, he stated. You weren't required to have them, Denise responded. My decision is made. A pause followed on his end, then a drawn-out breath. Are you certain? I am certain. She continued. However, I require one thing from you. Anything. She clarified, I don't want to be a token hire. I don't want you to showcase me as your feel-good project. If I am joining, I'm coming to work. I will build the team. I will call the shots. Roland's voice became serious. That's precisely why I wanted you, he said. And with a chuckle, he added, I'm not addressing you as sir. Deal, he concluded. A meeting was scheduled for Monday. He would have his legal team finalize onboarding procedures. She would visit the campus they were assessing in Tuscaloosa, the location for the first community clinic. After she ended the call, Denise paused in the kitchen, her bare feet on the tile floor, as sunlight streamed through the blinds. She had just made what felt like the biggest decision of her life. It wasn't born of necessity, but of deliberate choice. Mecca appeared at the head of the stairs, still in pajamas, rubbing her eyes. You're up early, she observed. I have work to do. Her daughter addressed her. Did you take it? Mecca replied, I did. Mecca smiled. I'm proud of you, Mom, she said. I'm proud of me too. However, Denise understood that this wasn't the conclusion. It marked the start of a life she never imagined achieving, and she was now entering it, not as someone pleading for a place, but as someone asserting her right to it. When Denise first passed through the double glass doors of the building in Tuscaloosa, the feeling wasn't one of intrusion. It felt like returning to a familiar place. The building wasn't elaborate, not yet. The flooring was concrete, the walls unadorned, and wires still protruded from the ceiling, but she envisioned it clearly. She saw the intake desk positioned to the right, a children's play area directly opposite, consultation rooms extending along the rear hallway, a location where care would not be a luxury. It would be commonplace. Roland entered, carrying rolled-up blueprints beneath one arm and a coffee in the other. He gave it to her silently. She smiled and accepted it. Day one, he stated. More like step one, she responded. During the subsequent weeks, Denise began her work. She sought out not only former colleagues, but also individuals who had been overlooked, underutilized, and undervalued. This included nurses, aides, translators, and even a former janitor who desired to learn administrative tasks. Denise possessed the ability to nurture potential, training those with the willingness to learn. Her focus wasn't constructing a clinic, it was cultivating a culture. Each morning, she drove the same car, a gift from Lucid Greaves, not to display it, but to recall the origins of her work. It was a reminder of that pivotal moment in the park, hands placed on a stranger's chest, desperately hoping to detect a heartbeat. After 6 months, the clinic quietly opened its doors, without fanfare or publicity, simply relying on patience. A woman accompanied by her 2 children, who had not received medical care in 3 years. A man with uncontrolled diabetes, a teenager seeking assistance with anxiety. Denise welcomed each individual as if they were old friends. There were no barriers of paperwork or procedure, just compassionate care. One afternoon, while she was revising intake protocols at her desk, her receptionist softly knocked on the open door and announced, "There's someone here requesting to see you." Without a name given, Denise entered the lobby and paused, visibly surprised. He was the man from the park. Roland had visited, sure, but this wasn't him. This was the man she'd knelt beside, whose chest she compressed until life returned. Dressed in a simple navy sweater and jeans, with a quiet smile that conveyed something deeper than words. "I never thanked you properly," he said. "You did more than enough." He walked over slowly, pulled something from his pocket. A small, flat velvet box. Denise shook her head. "If that's jewelry, I swear I'll toss it right back." He laughed. "No, it's not jewelry." She opened the box. Inside was a bronze medallion, etched with an emblem she didn't recognize. "It's from my mother's side," he said. "Passed down 3 generations. My grandmother gave it to my mom when she became the first black woman in her district to run a public health clinic." Denise's fingers closed gently around it. "I think she'd have wanted you to have it." She swallowed hard. "I'm not family." "You're exactly what family looks like," he said softly. "At least the kind that saves lives." Later that night, Denise sat on her porch again. Not with tea, with silence. The good kind. The kind that lets you breathe. The street was quiet. No more engines. No more questions. Just peace. Mecca stepped out, leaned on the railing beside her. "Long day?" she asked. "Best kind," Denise said. They sat together, watching the sky turn purple over the rooftops. After a long pause, Mecca said, "It's funny. What is? How you save a life, and somehow it ended up saving yours too." Denise didn't reply. She didn't need to, because she understood now. Some moments fundamentally alter everything. Not because they're dramatic or widely known, but because they reveal your true character when you are alone. And when you act from love, without any expectation of reward, sometimes life responds in an unexpected way. Should you find yourself in a situation where your efforts feel unseen and your work goes unrecognized, please recall this. Gratitude may not always be expressed openly, but it remains. And when it does reappear, it can be more significant than you could have foreseen. If this story resonated with you, please share it with someone who could benefit from hearing it. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. We have more stories similar to this that demonstrate the profound impact of a single positive decision. A $1 million neighborhood was constructed on land that had been in his family for over a century. However, when Elijah presented a handwritten clause dated 1923, the entire development and every home within it legally reverted to his ownership. Elijah Jackson didn't require an alarm clock. For 30 years, he had woken naturally just before sunrise, made his coffee, and walked out to the back porch of his father's old farmhouse near Opelika, Alabama. From that quiet wooden deck, he had a clear view across the southern field, the very field where his great-grandfather Otis grew sweet potatoes in the 1930s, and where Elijah's own children had once played in the tall grass. But that morning, something was amiss. The ground felt altered. It trembled. Elijah peered into the distance. Beyond the trees, past the fence line, plumes of red dirt rose into the sky. The machinery was present, heavy, loud, and incongruous. He placed his coffee down and headed towards the sound. Reaching the ridge, he halted, stunned. 3 bulldozers were visible. Behind them, construction teams in hard hats and neon vests were marking the ground with flags, as if claiming it was unclaimed land. But it wasn't. He quickened his pace, the Georgia clay swirling up around his boots. "Hey," he called. A woman in a light gray blazer turned toward him, sunglasses and a clipboard in hand. She seemed out of place in a field. She appeared someone who had never worn work boots. "Can I assist you, sir?" she inquired, her voice suggesting she already anticipated the response. Elijah surveyed the scene. "What is the purpose of your presence on my land?" Her eyebrow showed little movement. This parcel was approved for residential development under West Haven HOA's expansion permit. "You must be mistaken." "Mistaken?" Elijah's voice rose slightly. "My name is Elijah Jackson. That piece of land has been in my family since 1923. It is not for sale. It never has been." The woman held her clipboard up like a shield. "County records indicate this section was listed as unclaimed due to boundary discrepancies during the last zoning update. You're welcome to speak with our legal team, but construction is already underway." Elijah's heart was thumping hard now, but not from fear. "Ma'am, that land is not unclaimed. I have walked it every morning since I was 27 years old. My father was born right over that rise. You're building on ground that holds more history than you could encompass with your permits." She offered a polite, empty smile. "Then I suggest you take it up with zoning and planning. We're moving forward." The machines revved louder behind her. Foundations were being dug. Trees that once shaded Elijah's childhood baseball games were now being stripped away root by root. He didn't yell. He didn't curse. He simply turned and walked back towards his house. His pace was slower now. Inside, he went directly to the cabinet above the fireplace. It held old papers, maps, and deeds, dusty and yellowed with age. He recalled his father once saying Otis didn't trust anybody with this land, not even the government. At the time, Elijah had considered it mere paranoia. But as the ground outside was being torn apart, that paranoia felt more like protection. He carefully unfolded the brittle deed and saw it. The faded ink revealed Otis Jackson's name. 88 acres were purchased for $480 in 1923. There were no loans, no banks involved. It was built on sweat, grit, and the unwavering pride of a man determined to leave nothing for anyone else to claim. Elijah settled down. Documents lay before him. A growing unease began in his stomach. Something felt amiss. This wasn't simply a clerical error. He reached for the phone and contacted the Lee County Zoning Office. "I'm calling regarding a construction crew impacting a portion of my property. My name is Elijah Jackson. My family has owned this land for over 100 years. The person I spoke with initially responded with a detached, scripted tone. They stated that if my land was affected by the zoning realignment, I should have received a mail notification. I did not receive any notification. They suggested that notices can occasionally be lost, and then ended the conversation. It was dismissed with that, lost. Potentially, decades of family ownership could be jeopardized by a misplaced envelope. However, Elijah wasn't solely feeling anger. He recalled a story his father had shared with him. Years had passed since Elijah had last touched the old trunk located at the back of the hallway closet. He pulled it out slowly, coughing as dust filled the narrow corridor. His knees cracked as he knelt, unlatching the brass lock. The lid opened with a tired creak. Inside, among black and white photos, funeral programs, and Otis's tarnished railroad watch, was a bundle of paper wrapped in oilcloth, precisely where his father indicated it would be. Elijah was seated on the floor, cross-legged, carefully unrolling the cloth and retrieving a weighty, leather-bound envelope. This was the original deed, the one Otis had kept for himself. Initially, it appeared like any other legal document: printed text, handwritten notes in the margins, a wax seal partially worn. However, concealed roughly midway through the second page, in Otis's faint, cursive writing, was something unexpected. In his own handwriting, squeezed into the margins, a note read, "If any buildings are built on this land without the agreement of the deed holder or their closest relative, those buildings will automatically belong to the deed holder and no payment will be given." This was witnessed and signed on February 2nd, 1923. Elijah blinked. He read it again and again. His hands trembled. He wasn't legally trained, unlike lawyers, but he knew the story behind that clause. It concerned how Otis had distrusted men in suits, particularly landmen. Following a near deception in 1931, where he almost sold half the property for a minimal price, Otis had personally compensated a notary to assist him in drafting what he termed a safeguard impenetrable to any attempt to bypass it. This safeguard wasn't constructed from physical materials like wood or wire. It was comprised of carefully chosen words. Elijah reached for the telephone once more. He contacted Mr. Boone, the local attorney his family had relied on for 3 generations. "I need to show you something," Elijah stated. "It's about the land, about Otis." After 3 hours, Elijah was seated in the worn leather armchair, facing Boone's desk. The lawyer peered through bifocals, carefully examining the document. "Well, I'll be," he remarked, tapping a knuckle against the clause. "You don't see this kind of thing anymore, but it's clever. If this was notarized and filed with the original deed, it's enforceable." "It is notarized," Elijah said. Otis made absolutely certain of that. Boone nodded. "It's old, yes, but if it's on the record, it's still the law. It might be buried in archives somewhere, but that doesn't make it disappear. So what do I do?" "First," Boone said, pulling a legal pad toward him, "you don't say a word to those developers. Let them build. Every house they finish becomes yours. It wasn't due to your identity, but because of Otis. That man didn't simply leave you land. He left you a carefully constructed snare. A remarkably clever one." Elijah relaxed, feeling the significance of it acutely. He's been prepared to initiate a conflict, enter courtrooms, and navigate bureaucratic hurdles to demonstrate what rightfully belonged to him. But Otis had already handled the struggle. Now, Elijah only needed to wait. Nevertheless, he wasn't foolish. He contacted 2 additional lawyers, just to be certain. One for Montgomery, one for Birmingham. He provided them with scanned copies of the deed, the clause, and the notarization. Both contacted him again within a week. "This is the most secure private property clause I've ever encountered," one stated, Mr. Jackson. "It's as if your great-grandfather constructed a legal landmine." The other remarked, "I've never seen anything like it. As long as you record the construction, everything they build becomes yours. Every nail, every foundation." Consequently, Elijah purchased a drone and employed a professional surveyor. Motion sensor cameras were installed along the southern field's edge. He meticulously documented everything. This included timestamps, recorded footage, ground measurements, copies of sale signs, and open house flyers. Each day, he observed the actions of the West Haven HOA, actions that he believed they should never have taken. They constructed as if they held absolute ownership and marketed as if they had the right to sell. But Elijah understood the truth. And Otis? Otis had anticipated this day for 100 years. If the clause proved to be true, Elijah understood he had a single course of action remaining: to wait. Each morning, shortly after sunrise, Elijah would position himself on the grassy ridge, the site of the former barbed wire fence. He would rest against the wooden post that he and his father had set into the ground many years prior, with his arms crossed and a camera around his neck, observing. The land below was undergoing change. Where sweet potatoes once grew and his cousin had broken his leg attempting to ride a makeshift dirt bike, now stood rows of modern homes. The exteriors featured vinyl siding in muted colors, fenced-in backyards, and driveways so smooth they didn't feel like they belonged in the country. It felt like watching someone else rearrange your childhood memories without permission. Roads were paved with names like Sycamore Lane and Sunset Walk. Pretty names, but lacking any history. Light poles were installed, sidewalks were poured, and even a cul-de-sac was added that cut right through the grove where Elijah's mother had planted muscadines. The HOA proceeded quickly. Too quickly. Within a month, foundations were set for 20 homes. Real estate agents began appearing on weekends, conducting open houses and offering guided tours to couples and retirees. Large signs near the front entrance announced, "Now selling," starting at $385,000. Elijah remained silent. He simply observed. He recorded everything. Daily drone footage was recorded. Close-up photos of property markers were taken. Videos documented workers pouring concrete, installing electrical lines, and setting frames. He organized all of this in a folder on his laptop labeled Otis's Revenge. Occasionally, a project manager or a site supervisor noticed him. Sometimes they waved. Once a man with a clipboard called out, "Morning," with forced cheerfulness. Elijah did not reply. His purpose was not to socialize. He was there to observe. Then Jessica arrived. Jessica Brenner. She remained consistently the woman she had always been, clipboard and blazer. Initially, she didn't recognize Elijah upon his reappearance at the ridge. However, within 3 weeks, she began to acknowledge him. On one occasion, she smiled and called out, "Still watching us, Mr. Jackson?" Elijah responded by raising his camera and photographing her. She did not smile again afterward. New houses appeared rapidly, like weeds spreading. The swift pace was unsettling. One day, there would be bare ground. 3 days elapsed, and the construction reached the stage of a complete frame and roof. By the close of the second month, 32 homes had been framed. Of those, 16 were completed, featuring laid sod and polished front porches ready for weekend viewings. Elijah, however, remained undeterred. He proceeded to the county clerk's office to retrieve the most recent sales records. He observed West Haven's name appearing alongside buyers, with the buyers primarily from out of state, Ohio, Florida, and even some originating from California. He meticulously recorded observations, noting each closing date. He verified the location of each home, confirming its presence within the 88-acre zone. All residences were situated inside Otis's boundary. All of them. He even overheard Jessica one morning, speaking on the phone while walking the site. She said, "Yeah, Phase 1's flying off the market. We're starting Phase 2 next month. No issues on our end." The local guy watching from the ridge, just some nosy landowner trying to stir up drama. "We're clear." Elijah clenched his teeth, but remained silent. She had no idea. He possessed 3 legal opinions supporting his position. He had documented evidence, with timestamps, of construction on the contested land. He had Otis's clause, and crucially, he had time. Allowing them to build wasn't merely a tactic, it was a matter of justice. Each home they finished, every square foot they sold, contributed to a debt they were unaware of accumulating. Elijah had already calculated the figures. If the construction followed the initial plan for all 156 homes, along with the community clubhouse and parkland, the total value of the real estate would approach $70 million. This would be transferred to him. Jessica believed she was developing a neighborhood, but Elijah understood the reality. She was, in effect, expanding his portfolio. However, as the sold signs accumulated, Elijah started questioning how long he could delay the arrival of actual families. The first time Elijah observed children cycling on the newly constructed sidewalks, he experienced a disconcerting sensation in his chest. A profound sadness, not anger nor regret. The children were oblivious. Naturally, they played, circling, chasing, laughing as children do. Their parents watched, enjoying coffee on porches overlooking the Jackson property. This was land Elijah's great-grandfather had cleared manually. A few houses down, a young couple was unpacking boxes. The man waved. Elijah raised his hand a little, without knowing why. He was unfamiliar with them. They were unfamiliar with him. The new driveway occupied what had previously been his grandmother's garden. He walked home at a slower pace that day, not due to any need discomfort, but because the anger that had propelled him was beginning to transform into a different feeling. That evening, he was alone in his den, the deed spread out before him, as usual. The clause remained present, tangible, and still his. However, now he saw faces connected to the houses. He recognized people, not suits, not developers. Families were attempting to establish themselves on property they were unaware was not available for purchase. He reached for the telephone and contacted Boone. "I need to discuss something with you," Elijah stated. Boone responded, "I'm listening." Elijah continued, "If I delay until all the houses are completed, the price will increase significantly. However, if I intervene now, I might prevent these people from facing a difficult situation. They've just moved in, Boone. I observed a young girl riding a bicycle with training wheels today." A considerable silence followed. Boone's voice softened. "That presents a difficult ethical decision, Elijah. You are requesting something that is not permissible. It's a personal matter. Legally, you are justified, as Otis confirmed. However, what kind of justice do you seek? I am unwilling to cause harm to these individuals," Elijah stated. "Yet, I do want West Haven to be held accountable. They didn't merely trespass. They obliterated my family's history as if it held no significance. Then perhaps the true inquiry is it possible to inflict pain upon them without harming the people who purchased those homes in good faith?" Elijah rubbed his eyes. "Is it possible?" Boone paused once more. "Gaining their commitment requires careful consideration and meticulous attention to detail. Allow them to actively participate in the process, enabling them to take ownership. Ensure your guidance is clear and impactful, so it resonates even before others become involved." Elijah reclined in his chair. The ceiling fan rotated slowly above him. "I observed someone planting a tree today," he remarked quietly. He appeared pleased, as if envisioning this as their permanent residence. "Perhaps it still could be," Boone responded. "The outcome relies on your actions." That night, Elijah experienced little sleep. He revisited the perimeter of the property, holding a flashlight, observing lights shimmering from windows overlooking the southern field. Within those houses, families were establishing themselves, displaying pictures, preparing meals, and putting children to sleep. He couldn't have been responsible for their losses, yet he couldn't overlook the arrogance of West Haven, Jessica Brenner's dismissive gesture, the unanswered calls from their lawyers, and their disregard for generations, as if constructing on unclaimed territory. Elijah remained motionless for an extended period at the tree line. The wind rustled through the tall grass. He recalled Otis, remembering the nights that man had kept watch on the porch, a shotgun resting across his lap, prepared for any trouble. Otis favored immediate action, However, Elijah valued strategy and carefully considered his options. He resolved to wait until the final brick was in place, not to inflict harm upon the families, but to ensure those who had shown disrespect towards his family faced the complete consequence. And then, he would ensure no one ever forgot the name Otis Jackson. But Elijah understood that patience wouldn't simplify the next phase. It would only make it more significant. The notification arrived by mail, enclosed within a polished invitation featuring gold detailing. You are cordially invited to the grand opening of West Haven Estates, Phase 2 celebration and ribbon-cutting ceremony. Join us for food, live music, and a look at the future of luxury living in Easter Alabama. Elijah examined the card for a minute before setting it on the kitchen counter beside the deed. The event was scheduled for a Saturday morning in April. At that time, 138 homes were completely built. An additional 18 were undergoing final inspections. The community center had recently opened, featuring a pool, tennis courts, and a marble floor lobby resembling a country club. It was being hailed as the crown jewel of the county, and every inch of it was situated on Jackson land. The night before, Elijah carefully ironed his only suit, the one he wore to church, weddings, and funerals, paying special attention to the cuffs, a detail Otis would have emphasized. He packed a leather folder containing the original deed, the notarized clause, the surveyor's report, photo evidence, and legal opinions. He placed it on the passenger seat with the care one would give a newborn child. As he arrived at the newly paved entrance of West Haven Estates, the morning sun broke through. Banners fluttered in the breeze. A white tent stood on the clubhouse lawn where guests enjoyed champagne and sampled small sandwiches off silver trays. He parked near the back of the lot, concealed from view. No one recognized him. Not yet. From the periphery of the gathering, Elijah observed as Jessica Brenner, wearing a vibrant yellow dress and large sunglasses, approached the podium. Microphones were adjusted. Camera flashes went off. "Welcome," she exclaimed. "Today signifies both the completion of our second phase and the beginning of a promising new era for our community." Applause resonated. The mayor stood beside her. Several county officials, whom Elijah had contacted months prior without receiving a response, were also present. Jessica continued, her voice gaining intensity with each phrase. "Thanks to our exceptional team and the backing of our local government, West Haven is now a home to 156 families and expanding." The string quartet played gently in the background. Elijah moved forward deliberately, the sound of his shoes on the gravel noticeable. Jessica looked towards him, but showed no reaction. Not yet. He raised his voice just enough to be heard over the music. "Before you cut that ribbon," he said calmly, and the crowd fell silent, heads turning. Jessica blinked. "Mr. Jackson," she said, her voice strained. "This is a private event." "I understand precisely what this concerns," Elijah stated. "That is why I am present." The mayor appeared doubtful. "Could you please elaborate on the problem?" Elijah raised a leather folder. "I am Elijah Jackson. My family has held title to this land for more than 100 years, and every house, road, tennis court, and mailbox West Haven constructed sits on property that was never legally theirs." Murmurs of confusion rippled through the audience. Jessica moved away from the podium. "We pursued all legal avenues. A zoning error occurred some time back that you failed to fix," Elijah added, opening the file. "And significantly, this deed from 1923 included a provision drafted by my great-grandfather. It specifies that any building constructed without permission transfers ownership to the deed's owner." He presented the document. A reporter, standing close, moved to photograph the page. Jessica's expression remained unchanged. "You're attempting to deceive us," she whispered. "That clause is invalid after this length of time." Elijah remained unmoved. "I've had this examined by 3 lawyers. They all concurred. It carries legal weight. This land belongs to me, and everything constructed upon it as well." A man in a gray suit spoke quietly to Jessica. She visibly paled. The mayor cleared his throat. "We might need to suspend the ceremony." Jessica faced Elijah again, her voice now firm. "You observed. You monitored our construction. and you remained silent. I informed you on your initial visit that it was my land, he stated calmly. I saw you smile, and you called security, instructed me to speak with your legal team. So I did. A gasp came from behind you. It could have been a homeowner or someone else. Reporters were now gathering, with flash bulbs popping and pens writing furiously. Jessica appeared as if she'd swallowed glass. You'll never get away with this, she whispered. I don't have to get away with anything, Elijah replied. You passed the folder to me. He closed it carefully and stepped back. The ceremony was halted. No ribbon was cut. Elijah recognized this as merely the initial stage. The significant repercussions hadn't yet materialized. The following morning, Elijah's phone began ringing before sunrise. An unknown number appeared. He allowed it to proceed to voicemail. Subsequently, it rang again and again. By the afternoon, he had accumulated 12 missed calls for voicemails and 2 emails flagged as urgent from West Haven's legal team. By evening, the local news had broadcast a segment entitled "Man Claims Ownership of Entire HOA Community." Is it legal? The anchor appeared bewildered. Elijah was not. He was at his kitchen table with Boone, examining the deed for what seemed like the 100th time. The wording hadn't changed. The ink remained faded but legible. Boone reclined. They are panicking. They constructed $1 million project on land they didn't own. You possess every advantage. That night, West Haven's president telephoned directly. Elijah didn't recognize the voice. He had never communicated with the man previously, but he detected the strain. Mr. Jackson, I believe it is time we consider a resolution. We are keen to resolve this matter swiftly and discreetly. The current media coverage is not beneficial to anyone involved. We are ready to provide you with appropriate compensation for the land's assessed value, alongside a goodwill premium. Elijah didn't react with laughter, though it was evident he was restraining himself. You're suggesting a payment equivalent to the land's previous worth, prior to the construction of the luxury neighborhood? That's a significant offer. It feels like an offensive proposition. Elijah stated, you didn't simply relocate Earth. You sold property you didn't own. And now you wish to purchase it at a reduced price after you sold it for millions? Silence followed, and Elijah could hear the breathing on the other end. Controlled. Stiff. We could challenge this, Mr. Jackson. You could. Elijah concurred. But every home you constructed is already sold. Every buyer now has to question who owns their house. You wish to fight? That will be complicated, costly, and public. Another lengthy pause. We'll be in touch. The line disconnected. 2 days later, the formal offer arrived via courier. The offer included $4.2 million for the land, a non-disclosure agreement, and a confirmation that Elijah would relinquish all claims to the structures built. Boone reacted with disbelief, nearly choking on his coffee. I've seen offers disguised as bribes before, but this is exceptional, he remarked, pushing the proposal away. Elijah remained silent, his attention fixed on his neighbor's children, using a trampoline recently installed where his grandfather used to park his tractor. He was unwilling to have those children displaced. He was unwilling to have those families hurt. However, he also would not allow West Haven to escape with minimal consequences. Therefore, Elijah prepared a response. He refused the offer, requesting the complete assessed value for each sold home and unsold lot, reduced by a 10% discount for a comprehensive settlement. He pledged not to initiate eviction or repossession, but stipulated that West Haven must cover the legal expenses for each homeowner requiring a revised deed. He insisted on ownership of the community center, parks, and all remaining properties, requesting $61 million. There were no restrictions on speaking publicly, and a public apology was required. Jessica did not contact anyone. Her name was absent from any new official communications, though Elijah received reports. She was reportedly on leave. Some believed she had been dismissed, while others said she resigned. Regardless, the dispute had escalated to the boardroom. During the following 4 weeks, legal representatives from both parties met almost daily. Boone and Simone were seated opposite West Haven's corporate counsel, meticulously negotiating while Elijah largely observed the proceedings. They explored various approaches, proposing a reduced sum, hinting at arbitration, and even implying Elijah had knowingly permitted construction to proceed. Elijah remained composed, stating, "You built on my land. I didn't request it. I cautioned you against it. You disregarded me." Ultimately, West Haven conceded. The concluding agreement was finalized 6 weeks after the unsuccessful ribbon cutting. Elijah's total compensation amounted to $54 million, along with ownership of the community clubhouse, the undeveloped lots, and complete legal authority to oversee the correction of homeowner deeds, ensuring no families were displaced. The settlement was formally revealed at a public press conference. Elijah made brief remarks, expressing gratitude to his great-grandfather for his vision and noting that the past occasionally safeguards the future. He departed quietly, avoiding any media attention or interviews. A desire for tranquility remained. However, Elijah wasn't complete. He needed to ensure Otis's legacy represented something greater than retribution. The funds didn't alter Elijah, not in the anticipated manner. He continued to reside in the familiar house, the aged farmhouse where he'd spent his childhood, where his mother's cooking had permeated the walls with the aroma of fried okra, and where Otis's hammer marks were still evident in the doorframe. He didn't purchase a new truck, didn't relocate to a larger city, didn't install fencing around the land. He did, however, create something tangible. Several months following the agreement, Elijah utilized a segment of the funds, approximately $18 million, to purchase an additional 40-acre parcel of land situated 10 miles east outside the town of Tuskegee. This was land that had remained unclaimed for decades. He designated it the Otis Project. Working alongside local contractors, teachers, and community leaders, Elijah initiated the construction of what he envisioned as a unique neighborhood, designed not for financial gain, but for individuals who had previously been excluded from residing in areas like West Haven. The homes were offered at cost, with mortgage support integrated into the program, and applications were evaluated with empathy rather than relying solely on credit scores. Within the first year, 24 homes were finished, and each was occupied by a family. Individuals from all walks of life, teachers, single parents, factory workers, veterans, were welcomed, regardless of their circumstances. One morning, while standing on the first street of the Otis Project, Elijah observed a group of children playing tag on a front lawn. One little boy sparked a memory of his brother Curtis when they were 7 and too stubborn to wear shoes during summer. Boone arrived later that afternoon, holding a clipboard and a wide grin. "You know what they're calling you in town now," he said. Elijah raised an eyebrow. "What?" "The accidental mayor," Boone chuckled. "People say you were given millions, and instead of vanishing, you began constructing front porches." Elijah smiled. Otis didn't nurture hoarders. He cultivated workers. This wasn't merely words. Elijah utilized a portion of the remaining funds to establish a community center in Opelika, offering complimentary tutoring programs, job placement assistance, and a garden where seniors instructed children on cultivating tomatoes that weren't purchased from a grocery store. He also transformed the former West Haven Community Clubhouse, which he now legally owned, into a shared resource center, renaming it Jackson Hall. The tennis courts were made available for complimentary lessons to local young people. The pool offered dedicated swim times for seniors 3 mornings each week. While the Homeowners Association initially disapproved, the homeowners themselves greatly appreciated the changes. Initially, a small number of residents distanced themselves from Elijah, fearing he would seize their homes and viewing him as an adversary. Eventually, they understood that he didn't intend to dismantle what they had established. He simply desired recognition for the work his family had previously undertaken. Now, many approached him directly, seeking information about repairs, suggestions for local services, or guidance on cultivating vegetables in Alabama's challenging red clay. He consistently offered assistance to everyone. "I ain't trying to be a hero," he told a vet, a single mom, and one of the new homeowners. "I simply believe land should never be taken without acknowledging those who labored upon it previously." Yvette nodded. "Well, my son considers you a kind of superhero," Elijah chuckled. Have you ever seen me attempt to change a flat tire? He's likely to reconsider quickly. With the commencement of the second year of the Otis Project, Elijah made a final visit to the county archives. This building, where he initially retrieved the original deed, now displayed a framed photograph of Otis Jackson. Below the photo was a plaque that read, "In honor of the man who protected his land so his descendants could protect their community." Elijah stood silently for a moment, then reached into his pocket. He removed a small object wrapped in cloth, Otis's old railroad watch. He carefully set it on the glass counter close to the display. "I always detest being late," Elijah murmured. The sky outside had shifted to that gentle golden hue just prior to sunset, the very shade Otis would often appreciate following a lengthy day in the fields. Elijah smiled, not the smile of a victor, but the smile of one who had fulfilled an obligation. For ultimately, the clause wasn't simply about preventing thieves, it was about ensuring no one overlooked those who preceded them. And now, the land was speaking once more, its voice stronger than the sound of the bulldozers. If this narrative resonated with you, please consider subscribing. More stories such as this, authentic, unfiltered, and grounded in truth, are forthcoming. A judge publicly fined her concerning a small cross necklace, believing she was simply another person present. However, when she rose and spoke, the entire courtroom became quiet, and the subsequent events left even the bailiff astonished. Alana Merriweather did not go to the Rutherford County Courthouse, anticipating conflict. She went to support her younger cousin, Deshawn, who'd been arrested following a routine traffic stop that had escalated into a considerably larger matter. She requested a day of leave from work, chose a navy blue blouse, slacks, and flats. The outfit was simple and understated, yet respectful. A delicate gold chain with a small cross hung around her neck. It was not ostentatious, barely noticeable unless one looked closely. Someone did notice. The courtroom was full. It contained people awaiting their turns, lawyers reviewing documents, and deputies positioned along the walls. Alana settled into the second row, remaining quiet and composed. Her purse rested in her lap. She nodded softly to her cousin, who appeared exhausted from stress, his eyes weighed down by fatigue. He remained silent, offering her a look of thanks. That was sufficient. Judge Raymond Keller entered with his characteristic formal walk. The judge was known for a particular demeanor. Across Murfreesboro and in surrounding areas, lawyers spoke of his meticulous nature, traditional, direct, and unyielding. A Vietnam veteran who transitioned to a legal career, he regarded the courtroom as a space of great importance. His space. The bailiff called the room to order. Before proceeding, Judge Keller addressed the room, looking at the attendees as he said, "I'd like to address a matter of decorum." He looked directly at Alana. "You, ma'am, the one in blue. Please rise." Alana blinked, surprised, and slowly stood. Her heart thudded a little faster, but she kept her posture straight. "You're wearing a religious symbol," he said, his voice firm. "That's not permitted in my courtroom. Neutrality matters here." A fine of $50 was levied for disrupting court decorum. The room fell silent. Some individuals adjusted in their seats. Others averted their gaze, visibly uncomfortable. Alana did not respond immediately. She was familiar with being publicly singled out, questioned, and dismissed, yet she still felt surprised. A fine? For wearing a necklace? She glanced at the bailiff, then back to the judge. "Your Honor," she stated calmly, "is this a published policy? Could you please direct me to the statute or court rule that permits that penalty?" Keller showed no visible reaction. "This is my courtroom. I established the procedures." Alana nodded thoughtfully. "I comprehend that, sir. However, are those procedures documented anywhere?" He fixed his gaze on her for a brief moment. "You may pay the fine at the clerk's desk, or you may depart." She detected a quiet intake of breath from someone seated behind her. Alana remained still. She did not speak louder. She did not engage in debate. She merely inclined her head slightly and stated, "I am not leaving." A gentleman in the front row, an older man wearing a tan suit, lifted his eyebrow. His gaze moved from her to Judge Keller and back again. Judge Keller slowly straightened his robe. then you will be held in contempt. The bailiff subtly changed his stance. The prosecutor set aside his file. A palpable change occurred. The atmosphere felt denser, not with theatrics, but with focused concentration. Alana released a single breath through her nose. I'm here to support my cousin, Deshaun Grissom. The charges are being formally presented today, and he requested my presence. I'm not intending to cause any disturbance, Your Honor. However, I contend that this fine is not only unjust, but potentially unlawful. Judge Keller moved forward a little. Did you question my jurisdiction? Her expression remained unchanged. I am requesting an explanation of the policy and its legal basis. He hesitated briefly. It was slight, almost unnoticeable, but the pause was present. He did not anticipate that. Who are you? He inquired, his voice growing tense. My name is Alana Meriwether, she replied, and I'm a constitutional attorney licensed in 3 states, including Tennessee. The courtroom cracked open. You could almost feel the collective intake of breath. Someone whispered under their breath, damn. She continued, measured and composed. I graduated from Harvard Law School in 2010. I've worked for the Southern Center for Human Rights, and I currently serve as senior counsel at a nonprofit based in Memphis. I am present as a family member, but I understand the law, and I am aware of my rights. Keller relaxed back in his chair. For the first time, he appeared uneasy, not angry, simply unsteady. She could have smiled. She refrained. The ensuing silence was palpable. The judge began to speak, but stopped, instead rearranging the papers on his desk. However, the judge was unaware of who he was addressing. Alana did not grow up with wealth. She was raised in Jackson, Mississippi, in a faded brick duplex off of Robinson Road. Denise, her mother, held overnight shifts at the Willow Creek nursing home, and her father left when she was 8. Resources were scarce, but a set of principles guided them. Speak with clarity. Avoid minimizing your worth. Assert yourself when injustice occurs, but maintain composure and a dignified demeanor. By the age of 16, Alana had studied the Constitution from beginning to end on 2 separate occasions. She sought to comprehend the disparate treatment experienced by individuals like herself in courtrooms, offices, stores, and even churches. Her motivation wasn't anger, but rather a genuine curiosity. There was also a deeper element at play, a quiet determination. People consistently underestimated her, not only due to her brown skin or her choice to wear her hair natural, but also in subtle ways, like overlooking her in meetings. She remembered the way older male attorneys would address her as young lady, within rooms filled with men experiencing thinning hair and fragile egos. She quickly understood that possessing brilliance was insufficient. There were times when it needed to be carried quietly, allowing them to believe they were more astute, until they unwittingly stepped into a carefully constructed plan. When Alana was accepted into Harvard Law, it felt less like a joyous occasion and more like a validation. She had previously informed her high school counselor that her aspiration was to become a civil rights attorney. A genuine laugh escaped her. Then, she cautioned that law school presented fierce competition and wasn't necessarily a viable option. Alana remained silent. She simply intensified her studies. While attending Harvard, she wasn't boisterous. She found no need to be. She consistently occupied the front row of each constitutional law class, rapidly taking notes and posing questions that caused professors to pause. People began to observe her, yet still regarded her as unusual. This perception never felt satisfactory to her. After graduating, she declined 2 offers from large firms seeking impactful work. She spent several years in Alabama, defending minors within the legal system. Then, she moved to Memphis to join a nonprofit dedicated to combating housing discrimination. While she didn't gain widespread recognition, her work secured people's release from jail and kept families in their homes, transforming lives. Throughout this, she consistently wore her small gold cross, a deeply personal symbol. The brooch had been her grandmother's, accompanied by a handwritten note. It read, "Wear this when you need to be reminded you're not alone." Her grandmother never removed it. Not once. Not even in court. Therefore, when Judge Keller singled her out, calling her out as if she were a disruptive teenager in detention, it didn't unsettle her. It evoked memories of the instances she's experienced being looked at and not truly seen. They never anticipated her. They anticipated the boisterous one, the angry one. There was someone poised to lash out or leave abruptly. Instead, they experienced something else entirely, a demonstration of precision, control, and strength through composure. This wasn't unprecedented. In 2017, within a courtroom in Little Rock, she observed a public defender struggle during a bail hearing. The judge seemed disengaged. The defendant, a 19-year-old facing trespassing charges at an abandoned building, was on the verge of being assigned $1,500 bail, an amount he was unlikely to afford. Alana rose, introduced herself, and referenced 3 Arkansas statutes that the judge seemed to have missed. The judge conceded. Bail was waived. The defendant was released that same day. That demonstrated her character. Consequently, sitting in Rutherford County, facing a fine for a necklace of great personal significance, before a judge who believed he could compel her to be silent, Alana remained steadfast. She straightened her posture. When she introduced herself to the courtroom, her name, her qualifications, her purpose for being present, it wasn't intended for Judge Keller. It was directed toward everyone who perceived her as simply someone's relative. However, today wasn't a day when silence was an option. The courtroom remained quiet for an unusually long time. Judge Keller shuffled papers, seemingly stalling. But Alana remained still, her hands clasped before her, patiently waiting. Not contesting, merely waiting. From the far corner, the prosecutor subtly adjusted his posture, his fingers still. The bailiff's gaze moved between Keller and Alana. A change was palpable. The room's power dynamic had altered. It wasn't solely emanating from the bench. Keller spoke, clearing his throat. This court will proceed with the next case. He refrained from mentioning the fine again, at least for now. However, the absence of his usual reprimand was keenly observed. Deshawn's case was then called. He remained standing, still wearing the wrinkled button-down shirt from county lockup. He looked at Alana, his eyes reflecting both pride and concern. She offered him a singular, composed glance, a look conveying, "Don't panic. I've got this." The public defender approached the table. However, before he could speak, Alana moved forward. "Your Honor," she stated distinctly, "with the court's permission, I would like to represent Mr. Grissom today. I've reviewed the charges and spoken with him. He desires me to stand in his defense." Judge Keller looked up. "You aren't listed as counsel. I presented my bar card. My Tennessee license is current. You can verify with the Board of Professional Responsibility I am listed as Alana Joy Merriweather." He paused a moment too long and then nodded once. "Proceed." Alana moved to stand beside Deshawn. Her cousin appeared to want to laugh and cry simultaneously. She placed one hand gently on his shoulder as she turned to address the court. Mr. Grissom was stopped due to a non-functioning tail light. The arrest report indicates he was asked to leave the vehicle and subjected to a search without consent. No warrant was present. The officer's statement made no mention of probable cause. Additionally, the encounter progressed to resisting arrest when he inquired about the reason for being handcuffed. He did not raise his voice, nor did he threaten anyone. She retrieved a document from her purse. "I've submitted a written motion to dismiss, supported by 3 Tennessee Supreme Court rulings. Each affirms that a warrantless search under these circumstances constitutes a violation of the Fourth Amendment. Additionally, the resisting arrest charge lacks supporting video evidence, despite officers wearing department-issued body cams." The room was still again. Alana frowned, leaned back, and accepted the motion from the clerk. He reviewed it. It was evident. With a rapid scan of the room and a slight twitch of his jaw, Alana remained silent. She stood motionless, allowing him to read, while ensuring her presence was undeniable. Behind her, people subtly adjusted their positions, not from disinterest, but from focused attention. This was no longer the woman they believed was in distress just moments prior. This was a different person altogether. Judge Keller looked up. "You wrote this motion yourself?" "I did." I prepared this draft last night following a review of the police report and a conversation regarding the arrest with Mr. Grissom, and I am not affiliated with a law firm. I'm employed by a civil rights nonprofit. Our organization focuses on due process violations, housing discrimination, and wrongful convictions. The judge tapped the motion lightly on the desk. Your client's record? No prior arrests. No violent offenses. He's a full-time electrician's apprentice, simply trying to get to work on time the day this occurred. Another long silence. Keller turned to the prosecutor. State's position? The prosecutor paused. We'd be willing to dismiss the resisting charge. Maintain the traffic infraction. Alana spoke again, her voice resolute. We'd agree to that only with the court confirmation that the search was unlawful. Mr. Grissom deserves that documented. It was a confident move. No apologies. No hesitation. Simply a direct, justifiable request supported by legal precedent. Keller observed her. The courtroom rarely witnessed such assertiveness. A woman, a black woman, effortlessly navigating legal procedures. She did so without displaying anger or arrogance, simply presenting clear and precise facts. He adjusted his glasses. The motion to dismiss was granted. The traffic infraction remains with a warning, and no fines will be assessed. Alana offered a subtle nod, devoid of a smile or celebratory gestures. She then turned to Deshawn. You're free to go. He paused momentarily, as if his body needed time to process the news. Subsequently, he left the defendant's table and embraced her firmly. A murmur rippled through the courtroom once more. It wasn't regarding the case itself, but about her. However, what Alana did next silenced everyone. Instead of returning to her place, she faced the bench, her voice remaining calm. Before I sit down, Your Honor, I would like to formally challenge the fine issued earlier this morning. Keller visibly recoiled, as if startled. Do you want to reopen that matter? He asked. Yes, sir, she replied. You stated that religious symbols were not permitted in your courtroom. However, unless this courtroom is functioning under martial law, the First Amendment remains applicable. Her tone was measured. She did not need to raise her voice. In County of Allegheny versus ACLU, the Supreme Court underscored the requirement for government institutions to maintain neutrality rather than hostility towards religion. Prohibiting a small cross pendant, particularly from an individual who is not testifying or speaking to the court at that moment, does not represent neutrality. The action appeared as targeted suppression, and the gallery had gone completely still. Alana advanced 1 foot. Additionally, there was no written policy displayed, no public signage indicating the ban, and no prior warning provided. I am found without citation, without precedent, and without any attempt to verify my intent or role in the proceedings. Keller adjusted in his seat. His face had lost some of its typical composure. One could observe something stirring behind his eyes, calculation, doubt, perhaps even shame. Are you suggesting the court violated your rights? He inquired. Alana remained motionless. I am not making accusations. I am presenting established facts. I request the fine be rescinded, and the court record should indicate that this incident transpired outside established protocol. The prosecutor glanced up momentarily, then resumed, looking down. The bailiff's hands were now clasped before him, his jaw tense, and his posture more formal. Keller hesitated before replying. He fixed his gaze on her for a prolonged, intense period. Then he announced, the fine is withdrawn. This wouldn't be documented. Alana offered a brief nod. Thank you, Your Honor. She pivoted and proceeded to her place with composure. Murmurs arose once more. However, this time, they weren't filled with uncertainty. Instead, they conveyed interest and deference. A woman seated behind her silently asked another, Who is she? Alana remained uninvolved. She simply took her seat, retrieved her notebook, and gently opened it to a fresh page. The judge, for the first time that morning, seemed to be truly contemplating. His movements became more deliberate. He examined the files with greater attention. The issue he's ignited by the fine for the necklace had escalated. It had become something more significant. The prosecutor spoke quietly to the bailiff, who acknowledged with a nod and jotted a note. The shift was noticeable. Court reconvened. Several more cases were heard. However, the usual flow was disrupted. The observers were no longer focused on the legal charges. Their gazes repeatedly returned to Alana Merriweather, the woman who had corrected a judge without raising her voice. 30 minutes elapsed. Then, unexpectedly, Judge Keller called for a brief recess. He rose and exited through the side door silently. Alana remained seated. The bailiff approached her slowly. "Mom," he said, softer than previously, "may I pose a question to you?" She turned her head slightly. "Of course. Did you anticipate that occurring? Regarding the fine? Concerning everything?" Alana emitted the slightest laugh through her nose. "No, I was unaware of that, but I wasn't willing to ignore it." The bailiff touched the back of his neck. "I've been here for 8 years," he said. "Never seen him back down like that." "He's not a bad man," she said softly. "But power without accountability is dangerous," he agreed. It wasn't a matter of obligation, but comprehension. Further down the hall, 2 court reporters spoke quietly. The younger one appeared visibly shaken. She was familiar with every case, reciting them easily. "Lawyer?" one asked. "Yes, from Harvard. Can you believe that?" She attended to support her cousin and unexpectedly challenged the judge. The courtroom observers expressed disbelief. However, Alana felt no sense of triumph. She found no pleasure in undermining someone. Her purpose wasn't to shame Keller. She simply sought justice. When it was lacking, she created it herself, carefully and deliberately. Yet, a subtle shift began to appear in Judge Keller's gaze. Upon his return to the courtroom, Judge Keller seemed altered. His posture lacked its previous rigidity. He appeared unchanged in stature, simply quieter. No longer seemed a man attempting to maintain authority, but rather someone attempting to grasp how he relinquished it without awareness. He took a seat, adjusted his glasses, and proceeded to the next case. Even his voice had diminished in tone. It was subtly altered, almost imperceptible to an ordinary observer, yet Alana recognized it. She had witnessed this previously. Men in positions of influence struggling with a reality they resisted acknowledging. That they had transgressed a boundary, and someone unanticipated had retaliated. As the courtroom emptied and people moved towards the exit, Keller remained seated on the bench, his gaze fixed forward. Alana collected her belongings and was nearing the door when she heard him call out, "Ms. Merriweather." She paused and turned, her face showing no emotion. He rose from his seat and descended the steps deliberately, as if considering each one. "I'd like a word, if you're willing." The bailiff seemed uneasy, questioning whether this was a directive or a private inquiry. Alana offered a subtle nod, then turned to Deshawn. "Give me 5," she murmured to him. Keller refrained from escorting her into chambers. They remained just outside the vacant courtroom, maintaining enough distance for some discretion, yet remaining visible. He cleared his throat. "I owe you an apology." Alana didn't reply. Not yet. She allowed him to formulate his thoughts. "I formed an assumption." He proceeded, "an inequitable one, regarding your intentions, regarding your position. I was mistaken." She responded gently, but without resentment. He lowered his gaze. "That's the difficulty, isn't it? One shouldn't need to be." Another pause. "I have dedicated 32 years to that bench," Keller stated, "and I have valued order, structure, neutrality. But you help me understand, occasionally what we consider neutral is simply convenient for those already in power." The statement impacted him more profoundly than anticipated. Alana simply looked at him, maintaining steady, respectful eye contact. There was no trace of ego, only honesty in her silence. "I don't expect forgiveness," he stated, "but I will say this. I won't forget today." Alana offered a slight nod. "That's all I hoped for." She prepared to leave, but he called out to her one last time. "If you're ever back in Murfreesboro, I'd be honored to hear you argue again." That element genuinely surprised her. "I hope not to need to," she replied, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. They both understood the unspoken meaning behind her words. The sun had risen higher, and the heat was intense. Deshawn stood near the sidewalk, looking at his phone. He brightened when he saw her. "What is that?" he asked, astonished. Alana shrugged, retrieving her keys from her purse. Just a small civics lesson. Seriously, you confronted a judge. In his home. She gave him a look. Don't make it sound heroic. I didn't go there to fight. I want to hear what he had to say. When someone attempts to diminish your importance for reasons related to your identity, you face a choice. Remain silent or voice your perspective. Deshawn leaned against her car, nodding slowly. I swear, if I didn't know you better, I'd say you rehearsed that, I remarked. She laughed. I didn't, but maybe I should start writing it down. At that moment, a local reporter from the Murfreesboro News-Journal approached, holding a voice recorder and a notebook. Ms. Merriweather? Alana turned. I observed what unfolded. Our readers would likely appreciate hearing your perspective. Would you consider an interview? She looked at Deshawn, then returned her gaze to the reporter. Let me consider that. The reporter offered her a card and stepped back. You prompted considerable thought today. Such occurrences are infrequent in court. As I walked toward the car, Deshawn remarked, they will discuss this, you know. Alana shrugged again. Let them, however, what transpired outside the courtroom held equal significance. As Alana and Deshawn arrived at his apartment complex on the west side of Murfreesboro, his phone was constantly buzzing. Calls, texts, and even direct messages flooded in. A cousin in Chattanooga had already learned the news. A friend from high school had sent a screenshot of a local news blog displaying the headline. Attorney silently dismantles courtroom bias. Judge withdraws fine, dismisses case. Deshawn looked at her, his eyes wide. It's already on the internet? Alana offered a small smile. I mentioned to you, people discuss events, particularly when expectations aren't met. She did not seek recognition. Not currently. Not in the past. However, there were occasions when being noticed wasn't a decision. It was a consequence of acting correctly when the option of remaining unnoticed wasn't available. Afterward that evening, she was at her kitchen table, drinking tea, the small cross necklace still on her collarbone. Her inbox contained numerous messages, some from familiar people, others from unknown individuals. Several legal blogs had already published summaries. A user on Twitter had shared a clip from the live stream, adding the caption, "This is how you correct injustice," without ever raising your voice. However, Alana wasn't paying attention to any of that. She was considering a statement from Judge Keller. What we often consider neutral is simply convenient for those already wielding the authority. That observation resonated with her. She recalled her childhood, holding her grandmother's hand during evening church service. The pastor's words resonated. Sometimes the loudest thing you can do is not shout. It's stand. Initially, it seemed like a poetic statement. Now it felt genuine. The following day, she returned to her position at the nonprofit office in Memphis. Her colleagues did not alter their behavior toward her. There were no celebratory balloons or enthusiastic applause. Instead, one of the interns presented her with a file and requested she review a housing complaint by noon. She appreciated the normalcy of it. Information still circulated, even without her direct involvement. A week later, she received a call from the Middle Tennessee State University Law Department. They were planning a community forum concerning courtroom ethics and bias, and a member of their board had recommended her as a speaker. She nearly declined. Nearly. Then she recalled the courtroom, the shift in people's gaze when they recognized her as an individual, and how many others remained voiceless, awaiting someone to advocate for them. Consequently, she consented to participate in the forum. 14 days later, a pastor from a church in Smyrna contacted her. He requested that she address their youth group regarding the law, its true meaning, its protective function, and how it can be applied equitably if individuals understand how to ensure its accountability. She accepted the invitation. She continued to agree, not due to enjoying the focus, but because the narrative was no longer solely hers. It belonged to all who had ever occupied the rear of a courtroom and considered, "They won't hear me." She had never shared this with Keller. However, that day had also altered her. She frequently reflected on him. She questioned whether he retained that moment within his memory as she did. If he ever observed someone in his courtroom differently afterward, perhaps with increased consideration, perhaps with a touch more humility. She hoped so. One Friday afternoon, as she was leaving the office, she noticed an envelope affixed to her door. It bore no name and no return address, only her name typed neatly. Inside was a brief note that read, Ms. Merriweather, I've revised the courtroom conduct guidelines. Religious attire or symbols, unless disruptive, will no longer be penalized. That was all. There was no apology. No signature appeared beyond the initials. Yet it was sufficient. She folded the note and placed it within her grandmother's Bible. Alana Merriweather didn't seek recognition. She desired equity. Certain narratives briefly capture attention before fading. Others resonate deeply, altering perspectives, even without direct interaction with the individual who initiated that change. For Alana Merriweather, that courtroom moment represented not a culmination, but a segment within a more extensive narrative. A narrative encompassing decisions largely unseen by others. For instance, staying up all night to assist a tenant contesting an unlawful eviction. Dealing with late-night calls from worried mothers whose sons were detained without bail. Or traveling 3 hours to a courthouse in Jackson simply to observe a judge who was reported to be unfairly treating defendants with limited financial resources. She made no introductions. She simply observed, documented her findings, and waited for discernible trends to emerge. When questioned about her composure and restraint in the face of disrespect, she consistently replied, I know what I carry. She didn't need to demonstrate its weight to show it was heavy. That courtroom didn't alter her. It simply reinforced why she selected this profession initially. Not for recognition, not for retribution, for respect. She had no desire to embarrass Judge Keller. She aimed to make him consider. And in that, she was successful. Some time passed, and during a talk with a group of teenage girls at a public charter school in Memphis, one of them asked, Weren't you the woman who spoke directly to the judge and caused him to appear mistaken? Alana responded with a smile. I didn't speak directly to him. I spoke with purpose. And I didn't cause him to appear mistaken. I offered him an opportunity to reconsider. The girls seemed surprised. Isn't that essentially the same thing? Alana replied, Not in the slightest. Several of the girls chuckled, but a few seemed to take her words to heart. Those were the ones she intended to reach. She continued, The goal isn't to win arguments. It's to win ground, so the next person doesn't have to fight the same fight. That resonated with them, just as it resonated with her. She understood her story might disappear from news feeds. The tweets, the blogs, the clipped videos, they'd all be lost eventually. But someone would remember. Someone in the gallery who witnessed that moment unfold. Someone who'd felt invisible that day and walked out feeling a little stronger. That was sufficient. Some individuals enter a space seeking attention. Others, like Alana, enter, communicate with precision, and leave a lasting impact. The Gold Cross remained a daily adornment. She would be prepared again if another courtroom attempted to challenge its presence. For invariably, someone will attempt to diminish you to align with their expectations. And equally, a decision will always present itself, to diminish or to stand, to speak or to allow silence to convey your message. She elected to stand, with insight, not with empty words, not with arrogance, but with a clear objective. And that's what caused people to recall, not that she achieved victory, but how she achieved it. If this narrative resonated with you even slightly, if it prompted thought, emotion, or introspection, then please don't keep it private. Subscribe, distribute it, and help spread it. You never know when your steady voice might be the one that transforms the atmosphere.